In 1922, Howard Carter opened a small tomb in the Valley of the Kings. 4 months after Carter opened the tomb, his patron Lord Carnarvon died in Cairo. A shaving nick had turned into an infected mosquito bite, then blood poisoning, then pneumonia. London newspapers went wild. The curse of the pharaoh, the mummy's revenge. 26 people who had entered the tomb died within a decade, statistically no more than expected for men their age. But the story was too good to kill. He found 10,000 objects. Among those objects was a dagger. Its blade was made of iron, 3 centuries before the Iron Age had begun. Carter's team took 10 years to catalogue everything they found. 4 chariots disassembled to fit inside the small chamber. 69 model boats to carry his soul across the underworld. 130 pairs of sandals, some designed to be worn with a cane. The tomb also contained 67 bows and 270 arrows. Tut had been trained as a warrior, even though he probably could not have drawn a heavy bow. Ceremonial weapons for a ceremonial king. For decades, nobody knew where the iron had come from. In 2016, chemical analysis solved it. The blade had been carved from a meteorite. Carter also found 130 walking sticks in the tomb. Some were ornate ceremonial pieces, others showed clear signs of daily use, worn grips, scuffed tips. Some of the canes are inscribed. One says, "Reed cut by His Majesty with his own hand." Tut had walked with sticks his whole life. He had made peace with it. Those were not decorations. They were the canes Tut had leaned on his whole life. Egypt's word for iron was metal from the sky. A golden death mask. And the mummified body of a boy king who died at 19. A dagger with a blade of iron so rare it could only have come from a meteorite. 10,000 objects, a chariot made of solid gold. For 80 years, nobody knew what killed him. In 2005, a CT scan and DNA analysis rewrote the story completely. Tutankhamun ruled Egypt around 1330 BC. His father was Akhenaten, the pharaoh who tried to erase every god except one. A single sun disk called the Aten. Akhenaten built a new capital at Amarna. Ordered the destruction of the old temples. Egypt hated him for it. To understand why Tut inherited chaos, you have to understand what his father did. The temples were the economy. Grain storage, tax collection, medical care, education, all ran through the temple system. For 17 years under Akhenaten, that entire system was frozen. When he died, Egypt was on the edge of collapse. Tut's grandfather Amenhotep III had ruled at the peak of Egyptian power. Egypt was rich, peaceful, and the greatest empire in the world. Then his son took the throne and tried to burn the old religion to the ground. Priests were unemployed. Temples were empty. Peasants had nowhere to bring their offerings. The old gods that ordinary Egyptians actually prayed to were gone. When his father died, Tut became king at 9 years old. He undid everything, moved the court back to Thebes, restored Amun. He changed his own birth name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun. He married his own half-sister, Ankhesenamun. They had no surviving children. He ruled for about 10 years. He never made it to 20. For most of the 20th century, the theories about his death ran wild. Poisoned by a rival priest, killed in a chariot accident, assassinated for the throne. The 1968 X-ray showed bone fragments loose inside his skull. For decades, that was the evidence for murder. But X-rays cannot show soft tissue, cannot tell what was a wound and what was mummification. In 2005, an international team wheeled a portable CT machine into the Valley of the Kings. They scanned Tut for 2 hours. The bone fragments in his skull, damage caused by embalmers, not a killer. The famous story that Tut had been hit on the head was born from a 1968 X-ray misinterpretation. It took 37 years to overturn, but they found something else. His left leg had been broken shortly before he died. Broken badly, compound fracture, a wound that would have quickly become infected. His right foot was deformed from birth, a clubbed foot. He walked with a cane his whole life. In his tomb, they found 130 walking sticks, not decorations, assistive devices. And in his blood, from DNA analysis, multiple strains of malaria. When Tut died at 19, his widow Ankhesenamun did something no Egyptian queen had ever done. She wrote to the king of the Hittites, Egypt's greatest enemy. Her letter, found in the Hittite archives at Hattusa, said, "My husband is dead. I have no son. Send me one of your sons, and I will make him pharaoh." The Hittite king sent his son Zananza. Zananza was murdered on the road to Egypt. The reason he was so fragile in the first place. In 2010, the DNA analysis extended to his family. His father was Akhenaten. His mother was Akhenaten's sister. Full siblings. Tut was the product of a dynastic tradition of royal incest so extreme that it was killing the family. He had a clubbed foot, a curved spine, a compromised immune system, and multiple genetic disorders. He probably could not have survived to adulthood even without an accident. The broken leg plus the malaria pushed him over the edge. His wife was his half-sister. His stepmother was Nefertiti. Tutankhamun lived 19 years. He inherited a chaotic kingdom, restored the old gods, and died from a leg wound made worse by inherited biology. His death was not a murder mystery. It was a slow-motion collapse, 3 generations in the making. His tomb was small, his burial was hurried, his name was almost forgotten. Which is exactly why it survived. Grave robbers never found it because there was so little to steal. So Howard Carter opened a small, hasty tomb in 1922 and gave a fragile teenage pharaoh his name back for the first time in 3,000 years. Scientists have used the CT scans to reconstruct what Tut actually looked like. Not the golden mask, his real face. Round chin, thin lips, small overbite, long neck. He looked exactly like his father, Akhenaten. That golden mask you have seen in museum posters your whole life. It belonged to a boy who walked with a cane and who never grew up. The prince was murdered on the way. Egypt fell to a general. That general was Horemheb, Tut's chief of the army. Horemheb had no royal blood. He was the son of a small-town official. But he brought stability. He rebuilt the temples. He reset the calendar. He also erased Tut from the record. Every king list after Horemheb skips Akhenaten, skips Tut, skips his other successor, I. It jumps directly from Amenhotep III to Horemheb, as if the boy king had never existed. When he died at 19, his widow wrote to the king of the Hittites begging for a prince to marry her. His descendants may still be walking around Cairo today. But we finally know who he was and what took him from us.